This is day 59 of my 6-mark challenge for AQA GCSE Science. If you look in the description below, you'll find a link to all of the questions for this week and also the playlist that contains all of the videos for the entire series. Today's question comes from Chemistry Unit 4, which is the chemical changes topic, and it's specifically about electrolysis. But before we dive into answering it, don't forget that in this question you need to have your ideas laid out in a logical fashion, but that doesn't necessarily mean using full sentences. It's absolutely fine to answer in the form of bullet points. Just make sure that you have answered everything in the question. So here we're asked to identify the two products, but also describe how each one is formed. Unlike a lot of the 6-mark questions, this is not an extended response that's level marked. It's just a question where we need to remember 6 different things that we're going to talk about. Although to be fair, they are quite challenging 6 marks. So firstly, we need to identify the products that are made when this potassium nitrate solution is electrolyzed. So at the negative electrode, or you might call it the cathode, the cations are going to be attracted, and then you should know that the less reactive cation is the one that's going to be discharged. So my two options here are potassium from the potassium nitrate or hydrogen ions from the solution. And potassium is obviously a very reactive metal. It's much more reactive than hydrogen. So because potassium is more reactive than hydrogen, it's the hydrogen that is going to gain electrons and be reduced, and therefore hydrogen gas is going to be produced. Meanwhile, at the anode, the two anions are attracted. So here this is the nitrate ion and also the hydroxide ion from the water. And you should know that at the anode, we're either going to see a halide ion being discharged, if there is one, or a hydroxide ion being discharged. So nitrate is not a halide, and therefore that's not going to be discharged. And instead the hydroxide ion will be discharged, and the product, which is what they've actually asked me to identify, is oxygen. Technically it's oxygen and water, but obviously the whole thing is happening in aqueous solution, so we've already got lots of water and we don't really notice that there's a little bit more. So next we need to think about how have these products, hydrogen and oxygen, been formed. So firstly we're going to go back to the water, and that water that is part of the solution, those water molecules are splitting apart to make hydrogen ions and hydroxide ions. And it's fine if you want to use the symbols or if you want to use the words, either one is okay. So those hydrogen ions are then gaining electrons, or you could describe them being reduced, and that is happening at, you could call it the cathode or you could call it the negative electrode, either one is fine. And we could also show this with an equation. So two hydrogen ions picking up 2 electrons, because as we know, when hydrogen is on its own as an element, it exists as a diatomic molecule, H2. Meanwhile, the hydroxide ions are going to lose electrons, so they're going to be oxidized. And this is going to form water and oxygen at the positive electrode, or you could refer to it as the anode. And again, we can show this with an equation. So this one is a little bit more complicated. We've got 4 hydroxide ions breaking apart to make 2 water molecules, 1 oxygen molecule, which is the bubbles we're going to see, and also 4 electrons. So then in terms of things that are going to get us marks, we need to say that hydrogen is formed and oxygen is formed, because they've asked us to state the products for the first 2 marks. Then we're going to need to talk about the water molecules and the fact that they're breaking down to make these 2 ions. And then we're going to need to describe how each of those ions discharge. And we can either do that using prose, or we could describe that using the half equations that we've written there. If you're marking your own work, it's also worth pointing out that in electrolysis questions, your markers are going to be absolutely eagle-eyed at looking for whether you've used the word ions. Often it's the case that if you've written the symbols with the charges, then you can get away with not using the word, but that's not always the case. And if you've just used the words hydrogen and hydroxide, you definitely do need to be using the word ion as well. So I would definitely get into the habit of making sure you have used those words, because otherwise you could easily forfeit 3 marks here. On Friday, it's the turn of physics again, and this time we're on to that atomic structure topic, Unit 4, and thinking about 3 different types of radioactive decay. Don't forget, in the description below, there's a link to all of this week's questions and also the playlist with all of the videos in the series so far. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you again on Friday for day 60 of our 6-mark challenge. If you found this video useful, then don't forget to like and subscribe for more GCSE Science revision videos coming soon.